Hi guys, welcome. If you're new here, my name is Elaine, and on my channel I like to talk about bags from mid-range to vintage luxury. And as you saw on the thumbnail and title, today I'll be talking about that New York Times opinion piece, is the handbag over? So for those who have followed me on Instagram, the day that this article came out, I did do a little poll, and 75% of you disagreed and 25% of you agreed, which makes sense. I am a handbag enthusiast. This is a bag tube channel. So of course it's going to skew heavily towards the disagree. But I do think there are some valid points here. And also, I don't know if I 100% disagree. So if you read the article, which unfortunately is behind the New York Times paywall, TLDR, Vanessa Friedman, who is their fashion columnist, writer, expert, the question was whether or not handbags are over because women just use their pockets and briefcases. The question was actually posed by a woman from Denmark. So I do think it's a little bit different than the United States. I do think the United States and Japan, some other countries, the handbag still very much has women in its clutches. But I think, it might not be true for all cultures. The US is very much a status obsessed society in a sense. And so I do think, the status bag, the it bag is still around, but I could see it possibly being, I could see it being less so in a country like Denmark. Also, when I went to Amsterdam, it was 5-6 years ago, and I did notice, handbag enthusiast that I am, I did notice that, they didn't use a lot of it bags. They either had their own brands or just very sturdy, good looking, classic leather bags. And that was actually the logo mania time, 2018, 17. And yeah, there was hardly a logo to be found. It's definitely not the same as someplace in like LA, Las Vegas. So I do think it's going to be different for every culture. But sorry, I kind of rambled on a tangent. But the point was, Vanessa Friedman said that maybe the era of handbag dominance is over when it comes to fashion. Another YouTuber, bag tuber, that talked about this was Mary's from Mary's Room. And she does delve into the specifics of the article. So if you're interested in exactly what was said, definitely go check her video out. I'm not going to really go over it because I think the main point for me is really the question, is the era of handbag dominance over? And I kind of think, yes, definitely it's loosening its grips in the US. At first I wasn't going to say anything at all. And then I saw this very interesting Instagram video. So let's take a look.
I spent 5 years covering handbags at Women's Wear Daily during the era of the it bag, and it was so much fun, and there was so much talent in the space. So when the New York Times asked the question this week, is the handbag over? Most people were pretty outraged at the thought, but I think it's worth thinking about. When was the last time you walked into Bergdorf Goodman and looked at some of the prices of luxury bags? When did that happen? I remember walking into Bergdorf and a Miu Miu bag was maybe $700, and a Prada bag was like $1,200. A leather Celine tote was $1,000. And then there was a heap of talent at the contemporary level, like Monica Botkier, Rebecca Minkoff, Alexander Wang, Philip Lim. You had the Brits, Anya Hindmarch, Mulberry. Don't think, at least lately, like the it bag momentum is there. I don't think the bag defines you the way it used to. It's like changing how I'm thinking about style. I'm pretty unenthused by the handbag category lately. Tell me what you think.
All right, so I thought this was basically all the great points that come to mind when you say the handbag dominance era is over. And it is definitely due to pricing and without the subsequent quality improvements. This brings to mind another video that I did talking about how many brands are going upmarket. So as Chanel, which I think Chanel is really the most egregious one, but also is sort of the one leading the pack, as Chanel had pushed their prices up and up. So did a lot of other brands. Then some of these mid-tier brands are also pushing their prices up. And then even down to what used to be fast fashion is trying to differentiate themselves and are pushing their prices up, like Zara, H&M, Uniqlo, to differentiate themselves from, say, the Sheins. But mostly the handbag world, the price is just egregious. Everyone's going up across the board and it's no longer worth it, right? So as the generations come up and are able to afford these bags after a first job, I know after my first job, I think one of my first bags was a Louis Vuitton. I got a Speedy, and I think it was definitely under 1,000. I think it was maybe like the $900 to $800 range, which of course was still a lot back then. But nowadays the Speedies are what? I don't know, a couple thousand? It's ridiculous. Gen Z are opting out of this sort of crazy ritual and are going for Coach or even vintage. And I think also vintage has gotten so much better, the accessibility to secondhand bags. Back in the day, it was just eBay, and then it was kind of a crapshoot. There was also Fashion File. But nowadays, there's so many options when it comes to buying a secondhand bag, and even places like eBay have entropy and a little bit more of an authentication process. So you can rest assured that the bag that you're getting is more likely to be authentic. And then you're also getting other mid-range bag brands coming up, especially the ones from France. Atelier Auguste is huge. Polen, RSVP Paris is one of my favorites. And there's so many. And a lot of them also are able to get the word out through social media. And they do direct to consumer platforms and stuff. So it's very easy to opt out of the luxury handbag culture and just get a bag that's of decent quality that you like. And yeah, I think this woman makes a lot of good points about there was a lot more in the department stores back then, but I think now on the internet there's a lot more. And I wouldn't say the handbag era is over. I just think there's so much more choice now that you don't have to go to these big luxury brands. It's sort of like when music started to be streamed through platforms like Spotify, or back then it was what? Pandora, Napster. Though I don't think that was streaming, that was just downloading. But basically, the more access you have to other types of music, the dominance of just one particular band is kind of over. And sort of the same with streaming on television or TV shows. There's no must-see TV on Thursday nights because now everyone's just watching whatever they want to watch during their downtime or their free time, and there's no dominance, and like you're never going to get that, or millions of people sitting down in front of their TV all at one time watching the exact same show at the exact same time. And I think that's over for handbags. You're just not gonna have the it bag. You're not gonna have all these other people all buying the same bag because one, luxury conglomerate brand, might not be able to afford it. And two, like there's just way more options now. Like why would everyone want to buy the exact same bag? And I think kind of hand in hand with that is sort of, Hermes's Birkin era, I do think is somewhat over. The oversaturation of both the authentic and fake items. Why would you want to get a bag that everybody else has, even though it's hard to get? But is it really? Because you can always buy it from a reseller, or you could buy it as a fake. And I do think fakes in general also have played a part in kind of killing the handbag era, because back in the day, fakes were really bad. You could tell it was a fake at first glance. The leather didn't look right. The hardware was too shiny or whatever. But nowadays fakes are, if you're not carrying the bag, if you're not feeling the bag, it looks just as good as the original. And then now you have Birkin on every block maybe, and you're like, why would I want to spend money on that? Not to say that that's here yet. I definitely don't see a Birkin on every block, but I think sort of the it bag mystique is definitely over. And then I also wanted to kind of go over some of the comments that were on her video, which I thought was really interesting. So the first one says, people still want beautiful objects, just not disposable status symbols. I think status symbols in general have been diluted with social media. Like everyone can fake it these days. So what does it really mean if maybe you think 50% of the people are carrying fakes on Instagram or other social media platforms? Also, sorry to like harp on the Birkin, it's just sort of the pinnacle of it. But I mean, it also applies to the Kelly, applies to Hermes bags in general. When I say Birkin, just think status symbol bag in general. Next one says, there is nothing worse than the Hermes unboxing videos by influencers. Cringe. I absolutely hate those videos and wonder if these women had a lobotomy. I love Hermes, though still privately family owned as opposed to one parent company owning everything. Hermes and Goyard awesome. That said, the new Longchamp one East West won my dollars. The Hermes unboxing also has been diluted. I mean, and this is coming from someone who does do Hermes unboxing. So yes, I guess I am cringe. I would like to think that I'm not just unboxing the BKCs. I'm really interested in vintage and older styles, things that are a little bit different, which I find interesting. I think to lump Hermes, current modern Hermes unboxing, brand new Hermes unboxings with some of the older styles is a little different. Price points are different. You know, when you do vintage Hermes unboxings, it's a little bit more about history. I mean, maybe I'm just justifying it because that's the sort of category I go for. Of course, if I was offered, actually, I don't know. If I was offered a new Birkin, no, but maybe a type of Kelly, maybe I would go for it. And of course, I would unbox it here because that is rare to me. But, and I get it too, like, especially the women who do get the occasional Birkin Kelly or Constance, you know, once a year maybe. Of course, quota is twice a year. For them, it is very special. It would be for me too. I would be super excited and happy to share. But I think as someone who's not really familiar with their channel and maybe just sees that, they would think like cringe. Yeah, because like, why are you spending, you know, 15,000 or more on a bag in this day and age with what's going on in current events? And so I get it. And I mean, these are all sentiments that contribute to the evidence that the handbag era is over. I think we're done with the hyperinflation of luxury bags and the declining quality. Yes, I would rather have a purse from Target with $3,000 in it than a $3,000 bag. Valid, yeah. I have been in handbag purgatory for 3 years after being such a handbag stan for decades, for a couple of reasons. First, if it suddenly seems gauche to carry a 6K handbag around town, it makes me feel like a fashion victim. Second, media influencers are pushing bags for payment, and it makes me feel lectured to. But I think most importantly, it is no longer tied to my identity. I'm no longer trying to fit the mold of a Miu Miu girl or Fendi girl, because their fashions no longer compel me, and then add to the mix fake copies from China that are credible enough to pass scrutiny. So I cannot land on a bag choice that feels me anymore. Instead, I pulled out my 20-year-old Stan bag, which is too heavy, but oh, the nostalgia still hits. And I think this comment is basically 100% of what I'm feeling. I have been buying older bags, or I've been pulling out older bags. A lot of it is for nostalgia. Again, she talks about fakes and just sort of the inflation of fashion prices these days. It doesn't make sense. But oh yeah, and also the stamp. I never had the stamp, but that thing is heavy. Especially as you get older, why would you be carrying that bag? That makes no sense. Just go for a Longchamp. Though I'm a lover of a nice handbag, I totally get being a fashion victim. It's more fun to find beautiful bags and cheaper. Oh, sorry, beautiful vintage bags and cheaper. Also loving mid-range beauties such as Cezanne. Would love to see the rise of this mid-range bag. So many are beautiful. Influencers need to show us more bags and stop with the Amazon crap quality. Here, you know, I am in the mid-range to vintage luxury sector. So I do talk about a lot of those bags with the occasional brand new bag thrown in. I talked about it in my mid-range versus vintage bag post. There's pros and cons to each. I tend to skew more towards vintage because they do use a lot better quality materials back then. And also you get to see the wear and tear, and you really can see how they've held up. So yeah, I mean, those are sort of the things I just wanted to talk about. I would love to hear your comments as well. Continue this discussion in the comments down below. Are you leaning towards the handbag dominance era being over, or that, you know, handbags are still a key part of fashion? I would say yes to both. Personally, I don't think I'll ever get tired of bags. When you start mining the vintage collections, there's just a plethora of bags out there. They're all, you know, many of them in very good quality. I think that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially towards the end here where I got very rambly. If you like this video, I kindly ask that you give it a like. Or if you've watched any of my other videos in the past, I kindly ask that you subscribe. It really helps support this channel. Also, I gotta say, I try to look a little fashiony today, you know, with a little bit of this blue-red combo. This is actually my grandmother's scarf. I just found it in my mom's closet. What do you think of this look as well? Yay? Nay? All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.